Okay. Sometimes it takes a minute to hit the live button and get things going, but here we are. It's time to talk about how smart AI can be. Do we really know? Is that even a thing? What is going on with AI? There's so many things for us to talk about, but what I want to focus on is continuing this dialogue, this conversation around mistakes. And tonight's question is, how smart is AI? Is it really that smart? And what does it mean for you and I in terms of how intelligent it is? Is it better than humans at doing things? Because I don't know, some of us have had some pretty not great conversations with chatbots. And I think there's some opportunity for us to talk about not only what's possible, but what we should expect. So let's talk a little bit about exactly where we are in this game with AI and the level of intelligence in AI. We've been a few places, okay? I mean, look, there's a pretty long arc over time on how this technology has been working. And we know from the very early days that it's not infallible and it make mistakes. In fact, that's where I got the name for the channel, right? AI mistakes. My organization is all about learning from and taking advantage of these mistakes that are happening in the world of AI, whether they be human or artificial. There are opportunities for us to learn. And as we've taken the opportunity to understand what's going on in the world, we've been experimenting with these systems. Some of the first areas that we have really invested our time as humans is building a machine that can play a game of chess. In fact, this was one of the big benchmarks that we saw passed by artificial intelligence, its ability to play a game of chess. And it wasn't all that long ago, but a couple of decades, we were talking about, is it even possible for a chess champion to be beat by AI? And it happened. And we have consistently worked on increasing the capabilities of artificial intelligence. And that's what I want to keep talking about tonight as we're exploring this. The next big milestone I got to witness was Watson playing Jeopardy. That was a pretty incredible experience. I actually got to see what it looked like for the best players of Jeopardy. In fact, I forget both of their names. I think one of them was Ken Jennings. Forgive me for the other fella's name. Really incredible Jeopardy players. We set records. Went for many days and weeks as champions on Jeopardy. And Watson came in, and we got to see a little bit behind the scenes how computers were thinking, because they showed us on the screen how it was weighing the different options, the different ideas it came up with. And some of the mistakes that Watson was making were kind of comical. And that was actually part of the fun in watching the show. And as time went on, we did more and more. And probably the one that you have heard of is with Google and their playing the game of Go. And back in 2016, we saw AlphaGo beat a world champion. And we've kind of really accelerated from there. In fact, Google's worked very hard. But that brings us to today. And we've got lots of amazing things going on here just recently. We skipped a week on the program. It's funny how things work out sometimes. Last week was a pretty amazing week in terms of what Claude was able to do, taking control of a computer. And this is one of those situations where even the folks at Anthropic showed us that these systems are not perfect. Interesting things happen. Claude actually clicked on something else and started browsing around Yellowstone National Park photos. They didn't tell it to do that, but that is, in fact, what it did in controlling the computer. So there are lots of things that we still don't really understand. And that's where I want to talk about mistakes. What are some of the mistakes that we're seeing? Well, listen, I get a lot of really high quality information from the folks that I follow and the folks that I don't follow on the Twitter Spaces. Everybody calls it X now, I guess. I still have an affinity to Twitter. You'll have to forgive me if I call it that. But we have a lot of really intelligent folks in AI that are on X, and they're sharing what they know. And this one was kind of interesting. This fellow was relating his experience around talking to an everyday engineer, really intelligent people that are not working on artificial intelligence every day. And as they were talking about the impacts of AI on society, this engineer's impression of the world was that we were pretty much in a bubble. Now, candidly, I will tell you, I am not one of the folks that believes we're in a bubble, because I am studying and learning about this technology every single day. And we are just at the very, very beginning of this conversation. But what was interesting is kind of the different ways that people are looking at the technology. For this fellow Markov, he's looking at it like, man, this is absolutely magic. But this engineer, this fellow, this very intelligent fellow he was having a conversation with, did not feel the same way. And it's, I think, largely attributable to a lack of experience. But one of the other interesting details was how much pushback there was on this idea that it is changing the world. How much pushback there is on being uncomfortable with artificial intelligence and what it can do. And that's one of the things that I really want to help fix with my effort here in doing video and sharing my thoughts, writing the newsletter, which is about to be published any moment now. I didn't quite get it finished last night, but the presses are getting warmed up. It's going to go out soon. So if you're not subscribed to the newsletter, go pick that up. Some really interesting things have been happening over the last month, and I've got a lot of territory to cover. In fact, I've got a lot more to cover tonight. We're probably going to run out of time because there is such an incredible volume of material for us to talk about. But back to this discourse. When you have an opportunity to have a discussion with someone about AI, there's a lot of things that we have to sort through. It's not just simply whether it's human or AI. There's a lot of emotion behind the scenes. There's a lot of thought. And I think one of the things that we need to be very careful about as we're engaging with AI is what really is important. This concept of driving clarity of thought in the conversation, thinking about how social media is influencing the way that we think. It's very easy to find ourselves inside an echo chamber where we're not able to see what's going on around us because it's simply not important enough to get picked up and talked about. We've got a lot of things happening in the political arena in the country right now, so there's probably some distraction as well. But this conversation isn't that contemporary. It was a little while ago. But these are the kinds of things that we need to talk about because people are going to misunderstand what's actually possible with the technology. And that's really something that I want to be very critical in highlighting because we do have blind spots. And what's really interesting is that the people that are working on this technology day in and day out are not exempt from exactly this kind of a problem in a slightly different way, but ultimately it is a blind spot. It's not seeing the reality of the situation. It's not understanding or comprehending where we are today, where the value is and where the opportunity is. Ethan is a professor up at Wharton, and he studies a lot of business and technology topics. Really has put out some fantastic material, has been really great in sharing his thoughts. I would totally recommend his book. If you are into studying these AI capabilities, his book is a really great bit of material to help you think about how you can incorporate this in what you're doing. And there's a lot of opportunity for all of us to contribute. But Ethan is talking about having these conversations with people that are coding these AI solutions. The folks in the AI labs are not really thinking about how these tools can be leveraged in getting work done. When we look at the corpus of materials that you could focus on for leveraging AI, we're just beginning. We're so scratching the surface of this. There's a lot of opportunity. Now, some people are thinking about employment, and yes, that is an important thing, and we'll continue to talk about employment as we are covering this because it is going to have an impact. We are in the beginning of a change, but there's so much that's important here, right? If you're getting work done, you tend to think about just getting the work done. You're not thinking about the management layer that's necessary to run an organization and make that be successful. And you know what's really interesting about that is when we talk about what's possible with the power of AI, even this management layer is something that could possibly get disrupted. We'll come back to that in just a moment. But first, I want to dive into the topic of agents. A few weeks ago on the channel, we did talk about agents and we tried to kind of define what an agent is and what are the goals behind it. What does it do? Well, Microsoft has had something to say. OpenAI have had something to say. We've got a lot of different companies that are working on this. Even the company that I work for every day is very much focused on agents and what we can do with agents to get our work done. But one of the things that Andrew Curran shared is one of the things that Microsoft talked about in their exploration of AI is, what does it mean to be an agent? And what does that look like? What are the capabilities? What are the things that it needs to get better at and do well? And I think largely it focuses on this idea of orchestrating tasks, remembering things, enabling us to get work done in a continuous flow, right? It's being able to have that memory of what's going on, whether it's something that happened a moment ago that you need to retrieve and do something more with, or being able to swap around bits of information so you can accomplish whatever task it is that's most important. And then, of course, the last is that constant improvement. One of the biggest challenges we've had with AI is, when it doesn't do the right things. And even from the very early days of ChatGPT, when we entered the code interpreter capability, we started to see this situation where it would identify that something wasn't working and it would try again. It would try to fix the problem with the code or solve for an error message. And that's a really critical and important part. It being able to self-correct, to make a mistake and then fix it. That's an incredibly powerful component of AI agents. And I think that this is one of the critical things that people are completely unaware of when we talk about what's happening with artificial intelligence. So many people get caught up on the fact that it makes mistakes. They say, well, it doesn't do a good job. It makes mistakes. It's very confident when it does make those mistakes. How can you know if it's done the wrong thing? Yes, that is a concern, and we do have to pay attention to that. But as we're increasingly seeing these agents able to go after a task, identify what's not working, make a change, and do something different, that's a pretty significant change that we have to pay attention to. Really important. And it's getting good at doing that. And we're starting to see some other opportunities emerge. One that I saw this week that was honestly a little bit stunning for me was what this person had shared about a company that built an AI agent. And effectively, what they did was set things up so that they could have a 1,000 person organization. That 1,000 person organization had no middle management layer. That is astonishing. Honestly, that's a little bit terrifying for me, but it is kind of an interesting model to adopt. There is, I forget what the rule is called, but there are some that say it is only possible for us to carry on a direct relationship with up to 120 people. And after you get beyond that 120 people, it's very difficult to establish a level of trust. And this idea of scaling to 1,000 people by leveraging an AI agent that captures the information on what's going on and how the person is doing and is able to provide that direct information for the disposal of a CEO could really change the way that an organization works. In fact, it really does make it possible for a single person to work with thousands of people and get real work done, focusing on the right things, making sure that they are happening. Now, is this a thing that is going to catch adoption? I don't know. It's very difficult to tell at this point if this is going to be a thing. But I also believe that where we are today is the very beginning, right? There are people that are going to try this. just because they can. Now, I'm not sure that as a CEO, I'd want to be managing 1,000 people this way. But also, when you look at the largest corporations in the world, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of employees. And the way that they are managing that is by aggregating the content, bubbling up issues, and leveraging those middle managers to make things happen really well. And I think that the scale, when it gets to the thousands, is going to be a challenge. So I'm questioning if this is really the way to go. I think Ethan makes a very salient point in his commentary that you cannot discount the value of a great manager. And so keep that in mind as we're looking at the opportunities that are out there. But there's well more opportunities for agent. Here's another interesting one from the crypto space. We had Linda. She's talking about this AI agent that was able to create uh, a digital art work that was then sold simply by assigning that work. So there are opportunities for people to hand off work and for amazing things to be done. This is definitely a real thing. I'm using Midjourney all the time. If you're using OpenAI, you have access to Dolly. You can have it generate images for you. And in some ways, the OpenAI variety using Dolly is more agentic than a Midjourney, because what you type in is actually going to the GPT model that is then deciding what those prompts are going to be to Dolly. Oftentimes, you're getting a far more intricate and developed image because the prompt is taken from you. You're expressing what it is that you want to see, but then it is creating a far more detailed prompt for generating the image. That is an agentic behavior. It is taking your inputs and then it's doing something more with it to get you the end result that you're searching for. And so as we think about what's possible from an agent perspective, I was taking a look at the O1 agent card, and look, there's a ton of details in this PDF. I'm not going to bore you with all of the details, but what I want to highlight here is a section on success rates for agent tasks. Now, this is what really blew me away. We're talking about a series of tasks. Now, this is not capturing absolutely every kind of task known to man. These are very specific use cases that they studied and that they wrote up this great research report so the rest of us could understand what's possible. But here's what's interesting. There are things that these agents are very good at and highly reliable. If you need a Bitcoin wallet, oh boy, you don't even have to use GPT-4o for that, or even O1 Mini can do it. And O1 Preview, I mean, the success rates are really quite good. It's not 100%, but we're getting there, right? And this is when it begins to be meaningful. Now, if you go up the chart here, OpenAI API proxy was not successful. And that's something that they have an internal control over at OpenAI. All of these are OpenAI models. So there are definitely places where the agents are better and worse. It is encouraging to see that there is a diversity of answers here, because it's important for us to study the capabilities across a wide variety of tasks and needs. And I think that that is something that's really important for us to look at. And we've talked about mistakes here that AI is making on a numerous occasions. The bot mistakes are pretty easy to find. We've all seen them. And so today I thought let's focus on what the bots are doing really well. Like what's a showcase of some of the things that are happening. This is an interesting one. My daughter does a lot of singing in choir, and occasionally we actually have a need to break down music into various components, whether it's vocals and back sound. In this case, this model is able to identify chorus and verse, and it does it incredibly fast. It identifies the beats per minute and really makes things much more consumable for somebody that's trying to understand what's going on inside the music. And where this is really valuable is how fast it can happen. So we're able to take advantage of the tools. And it's not just AI, it's connecting these AI capabilities with existing automation that makes it incredibly powerful. And that's something that is a real big takeaway here, because there's a lot of automation already out there in the world. we don't want to simply transfer those things that we're doing with automation and give it to a large language model, especially if it's a math problem. If you want to do 5 plus 2, I mean, we've had calculators for 20, 30, 40 years that can actually do that, and they're very fast at it. Don't ask a large language model. That's a waste of those compute resources. But also, you also want to optimize for what the task is, the complexity of that. And there's a lot of different ways that we're doing that. There's actually even some startups that are working very hard on solving exactly that problem at OpenAI, and he's really helping us to explore and understand, you know, what is really possible. And he's highlighted a very high dollar use case where it actually would make sense to trade a very expensive legal professional's work for an AI model. And of course, there's a lot of implications from that level of capability. But I think it's important for us to understand that this is something it's been successful at. It's good at doing exactly this task. And again, there is a startup that has been exploring these kinds of capabilities. There are companies out there that are doing this and making it better each and every day. Now, here's one where you might be able to take advantage of the capabilities. There is actually this repo out on GitHub. You can go and grab it. Auto Jobs Applier AI Hawk will let you identify jobs that are available and instantly apply to them using the power of AI. So, look, maybe you're between jobs and you're in the middle of a transition. I went through the very same thing not long ago myself, and AI was a big help to me. Now, to be candid, I did not have this kind of capability. I was not using AI to apply for jobs, and I'm not necessarily recommending this solution for you either. You know, look, you have to be aware of what this is doing and how it's doing it. You have to be confident that it's not putting hallucinations or false information out there. But I do want you to know this work is happening. People are working on exactly this. And just so you know, it's not just the job applicants that are leveraging AI. We've seen stories of companies that unfortunately are using bots to carry on interview processes. I'm not really a big fan of that. I understand why they might choose to do that, but I just don't think it's really the right answer to the problem. I want to work with real people, and that requires a real conversation. And I don't think it is a bad choice to invest your time in other people. In fact, I think that's one of the best ways that we can spend our time is helping other people, working with other people, making great things happen. AI has a time and a place. But look, if you're out there trying to find jobs to apply to, this may be a great solution for you. This is another place where we are seeing success. People are finding value in this. It is a trending topic because people are out there looking at it and using it. So, you know, be aware. There's a lot of opportunity there. What are some other things? We've got all kinds of specific models that are being built. Now, we spend a lot of time talking about foundation models, large language models here on the channel, but you also need to know that there are many, many people out there that are building very specific solutions. They're doing fine tuning, they're modifying models for these very specific purposes so that they can do a great job. And they're getting some very good results. There are some amazing things. There is always risk to be considered. And that's why we have lots of things like benchmarks that are there to help us identify, hey, is this working like we think it should? Is this an effective solution? Look, we got more and more foundation models that are constantly being incremented. I still haven't figured out why Anthropic released another 3.5 model this week. I don't know why they didn't label it 3.6, but here we are. So we got a whole bunch more benchmarks to look at. This is one of those papers that is there to help us to try to evaluate and understand, are these systems doing a good job at dealing with large context, at finding those solutions in large document repositories that are given to them in order to find those critical bits of information for us. You know, having these kind of great tools is important so we can understand, is this working? Can I trust this? And we still have quite a bit of work to do, but I think we are getting much better at understanding, is this working well? Are we getting the right answers and understanding how we can improve and make those things better? Tutorial. This is actually a few weeks ago with Replit and Cursor. And in the news this week, we have an entirely new solution that is also in the space. I am a GitHub user. I have asked for access to this. So you see, there are more and more solutions out there that are leveraging AI to help us get the work done that we want to do. And that is the important takeaway. It is becoming far more reliable by these pointed solutions that are being developed. So now I think it's time we need to talk a little bit about how effective we are with these AI capabilities. Where are we today and what should we pay attention to? Here we have an article that was put out in September, and they're talking about the capabilities. They're trying to study this and really understand where are we. They're talking about topics around governance and understanding what actions need to be taken. And here's where we are. We've got some really great charts here coming back from April that are helping us understand where we are with the capabilities. Are they open? Are they closed? What are they good at? And the numbers keep going up. Not just the quality, but also the count of the models that they are producing. So it is getting to be much more difficult to keep tabs on this entire arena. But it is something that we must do. We have to pay attention to what is being made available. And this is the crux of the matter, because what we have is continuous plans to release more and more powerful models by all of the usual suspects. You know them well at this point: OpenAI, Anthropic, Microsoft. They're there. And then you've got the open ones. You've got Meta, you've got Mistral, and there's quite a few for us to talk about. So let's look at some of those models. Alan Thompson does a really great job of putting this on a single slide, mapping out all of the size parameters, trying to help us really get a grip on how effective these models are. Now, he just recently produced this just a month ago, and he's been consistently updating this on his website there. You can visit his URL there to get access to this yourself when you want to, but I really appreciate taking this information and consolidating it in a useful display. Here we have on the chart kind of where we are. And the first thing I want to point out to you here is that on the very, very close side, you've got the human average, right? That IQ of 120. There are no models that we're talking about on this page that are less capable than an IQ of 120. Honestly, candidly, I haven't done an IQ test. I have no idea what my IQ is. I have a suspicion that I'm somewhere in the middle. I know I'm not at the very far right of this 162 IQ, just because you're always benchmarking yourself around the people around you. I've been the smartest guy in the room a few times, but it's certainly the exception rather than the rule. And I actually like being around people that are more intelligent than I am. It makes the day a lot more interesting for me. But look at the chart here, right? We've got general PhDs, we've got domain experts along that lower continuum. And what we have here is that the only model that is not a PhD level is GPT-3.5 and Llama 2. Now, those models are still around. You can use them, but it's certainly not the most common. Even Meta is using the Llama 3 models for the freely available tools on WhatsApp and Facebook and the like. So the capabilities of these models are quite good. Now, you may not be experiencing this level of pure genius in interacting with the models, but they are benchmarking this. Now, be aware that it is a chance. You're not always going to get the best answer out of the system. It is highly dependent on how you prompt it, how you ask your questions, how you give it context for those questions. So there are definitely experiential differences that you and I are going to have, but also it's important to understand that when we're talking about these benchmarks, it's not necessarily across the board. It doesn't have to be smart at absolutely everything to get these high scores. And the things that it's good at are wildly different. You can have a set of consequences across various different functions. You might find a specific task that it's very good at, and another that is in a directly adjacent area that it's absolutely terrible at. And that's why we need to be out there making mistakes with the models. What do I mean? I mean, go out there and try it, put it to use, experiment with it so you can understand what it's actually good at. Because that's the only way we're going to find the value, is understanding what these models are really good at is absolutely essential. Because when they make mistakes, we need to be aware of it, and we need to counteract that with our own intelligence. We can build this symbiotic relationship between us and them that makes really good things happen in the end. But Alan's work here goes well beyond simply helping us understand the size of the models and the general IQ, but actually showing us where we are in terms of benchmarks. Now, this is where we get into the yes, actually, these large language models are very likely to be smarter than you. In fact, all the way back in 2020, we were hitting MMLU scores that exceeded the average human. Now, the MMLU is one of those key benchmarks that we've been using to understand how intelligent are these models. And we hit 92.3 with the O1 model in 2024. And I think there's still a lot of opportunity for it continue to grow and improve. But this is one of the challenges that we have with benchmarks, and we see it all the time now with the latest models. They are coming out having a good understanding of these tests. It's beginning to be easier and less complicated to perform well against the benchmarks. So how much can we really test the benchmarks? And whether or not you trust the benchmark is really a separate question entirely. But ultimately, where we are is we are hitting the top of the mark. So it's going to be very difficult for us to tell going forward how good are these models. And you need to be just a little bit skeptical of where we are from a benchmarking perspective. This is where we are today. You can see that O1 is clearly above the rest. We've got the 3.5S from Claude. That's the revised version of Sonnet, and its scoring that just came out this week. Grok 2 is on the map, and there's quite a few other players here. There's more and more solutions that are out there. What's interesting is that Google seems to be optimizing for quite a different scenario. Claude, it's still my favorite. But honestly, being able to work with O1 and watching it think through your problem is pretty amazing. And it's something that I enjoy working with. But even I can't come up with things all the time to take advantage of O1. Most of the things that I want to do are 4.0 appropriate, simply because there's simply not enough complexity that I needed to break down and figure out. I'm not a huge fan of the Llama model, and I'm still experimenting with Grok on X. Yes, I pay for that subscription as well, and I'm getting some value out of it from a social media perspective. And they're doing some real work with the size of those clusters that they're building at X AI. So I think we're going to see these numbers continue to evolve over time. But the takeaway here is look at where we have Einstein on this graph. Yes, what I'm trying to tell you is that that is the IQ level of Einstein. All of these models are outperforming Einstein's ability. Does it have the origination of thought that Einstein did? Well, that's another discussion for another time. But I think that we are at a point now where it is really important for us to pay attention, because we've reached a point where they can do better things than we can. Given the right set of information, it is possible for you to outperform those around you with the use of AI. And that is today's important takeaway. Is AI really that smart? Yes, actually, AI really is that smart. So, what are your questions at this point? I'd love to hear from you. I think there's a few of you that are still with me right now. I'm open to questions. I want to thank those of you that have been here on the live broadcast with me tonight. Really great conversation, and I really appreciate you joining to follow along and engage with all of the AI mistakes that we have going on here. Trying to bring you this program each and every week. Sometimes we have a swing and a miss, and last week was one of those challenges for me, but Look, we're going to keep making these, helping you to understand AI, where the mistakes are being made, both in terms of humans and artificial intelligence, and how we can take advantage of mistakes to make ourselves better. It's getting over that resistance to try things out, that reticence, that fear of it's not going to work right. If you can get over that and identify the places where these capabilities can help you create, can help you do things that you would never have been able to do before, I know it's a recipe for success. I do it here on the program. I'm using AI to create all of the great experiences that I'm trying to bring to you. The background is made by AI. The power of AI is removing the green screen that's behind me, so you get to look at the pretty picture that I generated with AI. It helps me figure out what I'm going to talk about and think more clearly about the discussion points. It helps me find the right material to talk about. I use Perplexity very frequently to find those critical documents and break down those research papers so that I can understand everything that's going on in the world of AI and bring it to you. So if you're finding any of this content valuable, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Please would appreciate if you will like and follow and subscribe, do all of the social things that will help me to grow and reach more people, because that is ultimately the goal here. It's about you. It's about the human. It's about making this technology work for us in new and incredible ways so we can create like never before. I hope you'll keep joining me. Look out for that newsletter. Get signed up if you're not, and go make some AI mistakes. We'll see you next time.